Welcome to Samson Equipment's Strength Coach Collective presented by Samson Equipment. I'm your host, Matt Tometz, and I'm joined today by Tyler Lesher, who is the head athletic trainer / strength and conditioning specialist of the Greensboro Swarm, who is the G League affiliate for the Charlotte Hornets. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome to record a podcast, hear some awesome stories and experiences, and I'm excited just because of your dual role and your job title and responsibilities and everything like that. So we conquered technology. We're finally recording. So let's get into it. If you could please share a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, man. So background kind of goes, I'm from Wyoming, born and raised there. Did the beginnings of my undergrad work at Casper College, a little small junior college there. Was there for a couple years as actually a nursing major. And the day before the NCLEX, I was like, this isn't it. And so, day before the boards, I switched over to athletic training because I was a gym rat. And then, graduated from there, moved down to New Mexico and went to New Mexico State down in Cruces. That's kind of where I got linked up with everybody in Samson anyway. But got my undergrad there in athletic training, worked a bunch of different sports, had a blast. After that, I went to California State Chico. I took over as a GA for the men's basketball team there. That's where I got my master's, and at the same time I did like my CSCS and the PES and the CES, just kind of knocked all those out while I, one of the summers had some time to study and get those under my belt. After that, struggled finding a job for a bit. It was really weird and interesting, but I couldn't get a job. Moved back to Cruces, and one of my buddies there ended up hiring me as an assistant athletic trainer for Oñate High School. Was there for like 4 months, or 3 months before the, semester ended. And then after that, got paired up with the Cavaliers for a year-long internship. And after that, got picked up by the Hornets and been going strong ever since with them. It's been a good time. Been lots and lots of moving, but it's been fun.
Part of the gig and the journey, and logging a lot of miles, I'm sure.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
funny, day before the nursing boards. Good thing it wasn't one day after.
Right? Exactly.
So we'll get into the first main question. What's the coolest story you have thus far in your career?
There's a lot, just like a bunch of like little ones that just kind of like build up. The top two that I can think of is one day when I was interning with the Cavs. We were going through training camp, and I think, LeBron's team was down like 4 points, and, they were going back and forth. And LeBron just completely takes over in practice. There's like 10 seconds left. He steals the ball, comes down. I'm standing on the far baseline, and he jumps and does his like typical LeBron thing, rams it home, comes down and is like right here in front of me and literally picks me up like Simba and just goes, "That's how you do it, Tyler. That's how you do it." And sits me down and then runs back on defense. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, what was that? But that was just wild to see, the intensity from him, and then just like literally just pick me up like a child.
You're not exactly a small man either.
No, I mean, I try not to be, but geez. So like that was always a cool thing that I hold on to. And then the only other thing that compares to that is like, meeting MJ, because you're the owner of the Hornets, and like he hugged me one time and I felt like I was getting hugged by an angel or God. So all those stuff like that. But yeah, that's probably it. A bunch of other little stories, wild travel stories from the G League and whatnot. But those are the top two that really stick out.
Fantastic. So a little question before getting into the big one. Is basketball kind of your sport, or were you playing kind of anywhere and everywhere and you kind of just latched on to basketball?
No, basketball's always been it for me. Grew up playing basketball, went to Casper College originally on like a basketball scholarship. After that, the goal was to always work in the NBA in some capacity. That's why I didn't go through with the nursing. It was just like no nurses ever work in the NBA, at that scale. So, it's always been basketball for me. Even when I went to New Mexico State, like I was originally plugged with football, and halfway through they took me out and put me with the men's basketball team.
Dang.
So yeah,
Cool.
it's just basketball.
Yeah, you definitely have to have your destination in mind, and a lot of other things will kind of take care of itself. It takes the guesswork out of it.
For sure.
So next big question. So going from high school to the pros, even though it was an internship, so how was kind of your job search and just like making that jump? And I'm gonna kind of toss in all these questions, and then they'll sort themselves out as we go. So kind of like, what was it like making that jump? How did that come to be with having relatively little experience for something in the pros? And then kind of like the biggest difference, besides the obvious, biggest learning curve misconception. So kind of just that story of getting to the Cavs, and we'll address those small parts as we go.
Yeah. So the biggest aspect to it was when I was a junior at New Mexico State, I went to the Rocky Mountain Athletic Training Conference, and I met at the time, assistant athletic trainer for the Denver Nuggets. And I just never let go of communication with him for years. I mean, years. Like I was texting him and emailing him like every month, just like, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy Valentine's Day, like all, every chance I could, like, I would just go, I would go and see him. Like if they were playing in Sacramento, I would drive down. If they were playing in the San Francisco, I'd drive over there and he'd leave me a ticket. And it's like literally just like constantly driving to like just get 5-6 minutes of FaceTime with him. He's now the head athletic trainer for the Nuggets. And when I finished my master's and was kind of looking for a job, he randomly reached out to me and was like, "Hey man, like, what are you doing for work right now?" And I was actually a bouncer of all things. And I was like, I'm looking, man, I don't have anything. He plugged me with the Cavs, Warriors, and Bulls. So I never got an interview with the Bulls. I went through 4 interviews with the Warriors and then 3 with the Cavs, and ended up getting offered the job with the Cavaliers. So that's how that whole thing came to be. The moment I stepped foot in Cleveland was like the biggest slap in the face learning curve ever. Because like, I mean, I was young, but I thought I knew it. I was like, like I did it the last 2 years with Chico and the men's basketball team. Things worked there. Kind of keep things simple. I walk into the athletic training room and just everything was new. Everything was new. Like sporting equipment that I've never seen before, how they were treating athletes, how, the management of athletes, the sports science behind it, had absolutely no clue what was going on at all. I realized that like I am the smallest fish in the world's largest pond. And it just instantly had to start learning everything. What is this? What is that? What are you doing here? What are you doing there? Going into the weight room, learning stuff there. Originally I got my CSCS as a resume booster. I was like, I don't really know if I'll ever quite use it, at the time. And then when I got the gig with the Cavs, it was, you're not just going to be our intern here, but you're going to go down to at the time it was the D League team, the Canton Charge, and you're going to be the head strength coach for them and the assistant athletic trainer. And that's when I was like, wait, like, I actually got to like learn this stuff and how to apply it, like the programming, all these things that, we now do every day. But it was just a giant, like what am I doing here kind of thing, and it was like my first like true sink or swim moment in like as a professional. And, I'm not going to say I swam, but like I was treading water for a while.
It's funny how right when you think you have it all figured out, that's when you get sent right back down to the bottom. So life has a funny way of sorting out like that. And then, so it's interesting your answer about how the Cavs came to be, because someone might have stalked your LinkedIn and the internet about yourself before this interview, and seeing just your LinkedIn, it was Hornets, Cavs, high school. So I was like, something doesn't add up all the way. So I'm going to go out on a limb and assume there was something beyond just applying on the website and getting that. So, and I love that story, how it started with the conference, and then it was all the follow-ups, and then it was going and doing the extra, of like, hey, you're a few hours away, like I'd love to come chat with you at the game when you're leaving the stadium, or hey, if you're coming in town, let me pick you up from the airport. And it's just like, it's not harassing them. It's staying like professionally relevant, once a month, big holidays, a congrats after a big win. Because, like people can understand this networking and staying in touch thing, but they can do it completely overkill. So I think it's an awesome story, just how professionally relevant, how it was enough, it was extra, but it wasn't like too much. And then, so along those lines, and that kind of story of getting with the Cavs, if people are trying to make that jump themselves, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, network. That's the biggest thing. Whether it's on LinkedIn, you're messaging people, you are writing, like Googling like NBA TA or people in the NBSCA, all these things. It all comes down to network, and really the one advantage people have now is like social media. You have direct access to every person that has an account or whatever. But then like it wasn't that big of a thing. So it was like, yeah, you have to go to the conferences, you have to do these things. And the biggest thing I can say is like once you have that connection with someone, in the league, like, you cannot let it go. Do whatever you can. I mean, I remember like racking up money on my credit card to drive up to Denver, and I had zero money, and it was like like one story was the Nuggets guy texts me and goes, "Hey, can you be at our game tonight at like 8 p.m.?" And it was like, I don't know, 9 a.m. that day. And I was in Cruces. Immediately got in my car, just drove. It was a 10-hour drive. Drove. I was like, well, just got to get the FaceTime, And it's just like little stuff like that, like you have to do these things to get the FaceTime and build these connections up, So like for any like new person coming in, reach out, connect. Once you make that connection, even if it's just like a one email, just keep building, build, because it won't go forgotten. At least, the people that like actually like invest in their community and their network, it will never go forgotten.
And with the credit card bills and the long hours in the car, and this is a story where it did work out. I'm not trying to say, oh, you hit up one person and then you end up with your dream job. But just as easy as it is to say, what if I spend all that money and all those hours and it doesn't work out? Just as easily you can say, well, what if it does?
Exactly.
So it's not a rah feel good. Like I'm not saying, as soon as you hit $4,000 on your credit card, your job's going to arrive. Like that's not what we're saying. But this is likely as it won't, it will. A good friend of mine said all what ifs are equal because it's all kind of theoretical. But the only way to find out is by going and doing. So that's a super cool story.
Yeah, nothing will ever happen if the effort isn't applied. It's that simple. Like if the effort is not there, nothing will ever happen.
Getting deep right there, not only for networking, but just like everything is so like things happen with action. Like nothing happens in just talking about it or thinking about it. That's one thing that I've really embodied is like you have to understand why it's a good decision first, and then you got to go and do it. And I think that's a pretty simple formula to follow. So yeah, I really like that story. Just a hunch that there was a story behind landing that gig with the Cavs. So I'm definitely glad it worked out. And anything else on that topic? You ready to move on?
Like the biggest thing, just a lot of these jobs that you see posted online, like definitely apply for them. Know that like, some of them are kind of just, they're there. Like you have to make these connections to really get these jobs. And because someone's always going to reach out to someone else and be like, or someone that they trust and say, hey, who do you have for me? I have an open position. And that's how these jobs get filled. It's never just oh, hey, I can hop on, Indeed or, Teamwork Sports and apply and, have a good chance at it. So it really all comes down to networking.
Yeah. As soon as that gets posted, everyone on their staff starts, if they all text 3 people, that's like 15, 20, 25, 30 people that have firsthand connections as opposed to like some stranger on a computer screen. Now,
exactly.
If you being a stranger on their computer screen can be the second time they see your name or the third time, that's way different. So it definitely both go hand in hand. But yeah, super cool kind of actionable story. So I like that one a lot. Next big question. In your opinion, what's the key to a good strength coach athletic trainer relationship?
Communication. Communication is everything with it. You have to be able to have a player that's on the table, find the discrepancies, whatever it might be. And when they go into the weight room, that open communication, say, hey, today I saw this, 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 and this. So, when you're working with them, let's focus on this, this, and this, and this, and then have you build on it from there. So that the communication is everything between athletic training and strength coach. And this last year, I had an awesome strength coach, Andre Matson, with the Swarm. Absolutely incredible, smart human, and just was able, I could yell over my shoulder, hey, we need this, this, and this, and he's just perfect gone. And would take the guy out, and that's how you build these players up. So I would say that's number one for sure, is just having that communication and the trust. And then, just having somebody that has I'd say cohesive backgrounds, to where it's okay, you are really good at X, Y, Z. I'm really good at A, B, C. So, when we have a player that's somewhere in the middle, we can really converse and, find these different, different methods and ways to get our players better. That's really what it all comes down to.
And not to say something that's kind of buzzwordy, but a high performance model, people are accepting that all these jobs are more similar than dissimilar. And then you're all working together for the same goal. You just have your own specific methods. So it's staying in your lane, but having both experiences, it was interesting kind of just to see, because you've had the independent ones and then you've had the kind of dual roles, but it's staying in your lane, but you're all going towards the same goals, and you guys can both help each other if you make it so and you communicate. So although a simple answer, relatively just saying communication, but knowing how to communicate, knowing their learning style, knowing where they want you to fit in, once you have that kind of buy-in and trust and just professional buy-in, I guess, coworker buy-in.
Yeah.
Next big question. So having a dual role and in multiple places, do you think that, so I'm skipping questions. Do you think that more teams should have dual roles? So a strength coach, athletic trainer, a strength coach, sports scientist, athletic trainer, nutritionist, kind of just pros and cons and just your interpretation of roles like that.
Yeah, I think it's vital. I think anytime you can have dual roles, whether it's the ATC, CSCS, AT, nutritionist, whatever it might be, all it really does is it just adds more, it promotes more discussion. You can have someone who's top tier nutritionist, top tier strength coach, and then a person that's top tier athletic trainer, someone in the middle, and it's just another person to bounce ideas off of and add to the brainstorming level to be hey, we can go, you're here and you're here, there's another way that we can go here that, maybe just isn't thought of. And I think that that can apply to in really any profession. Is the more we have, just you're broad across different areas. It just all goes back to improving player care, and the more well-rounded you are and being able to go I have experience with this, I can do this, I've seen this, whatever it might be, the better you are. And I also think it just advances the profession in general. Being able to just be okay, it used to be you are an athletic trainer, you're only an athletic trainer, stay in the training room, hold a towel on your shoulder, whatever it might be. And then you're only a strength coach, you're only in here to yell at athletes and get them bigger, better, stronger. And that's what it is. And it's just not the case anymore. Like you said, that high performance model, it's really come down to bridging that gap and being able to go, for me, especially once I got to Cleveland, understanding the value of taking a player off the table and after 30 minutes of treatments and walking straight into the weight room and going okay, now let's implement our corrective exercises, our performance exercises, and building him up and really seeing the progress from a player that, walked in limping to now doing whatever. I think that's where stuff like that becomes vital. Is, you have to be as well-rounded as possible, because we have to take care of these athletes in the most well-rounded way. It's never just, okay, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this. All right, you're out. we have to be able to apply multiple areas of research and ideas to improve these players, so that's why like this last year, like my whole focus has been on nutrition and gut health, mainly gut health, and how it applies to mental health and, decreasing like player soreness and, all these different variables. It's just, we have to make ourselves, one, more marketable, and two, better to help these players, reach that next level, because 1%, especially at the NBA, 1% makes a huge difference. And if you can do things like, as far as like 1, 5, 2, whatever percentage is better than someone else, that's the difference of getting a second contract or a first contract, making the G League, making the jump for a 10-day contract, whatever it might be. So these little things boost everything else.
Being an expert generalist is a phrase that I like, because back in the olden days, however long ago, I hate speaking in generalities, but where it's like you just stay in the weight room, you just stay in your nutrition office, you just stay in the weight room, where if you have that value, speaking about contracts and things like that, if you have that value where you weren't even intending on doing anything S&C related in the NBA, but they're like, oh, hey, there's value here. We have to hire one guy and we get like two birds with one stone, so there's that component of it to where it's more marketable. And like, think about, so in myself and my own job search, having strength coach experience and then also having 2 years as a sports scientist and college experience, I can help the strength coach with Excel, and then I can talk about how we can implement some data and testing into his programming. And then I can share my data with the athletic trainer for the return to play and all of this kind of stuff. And then even like our heart monitors get calories, and then the nutritionist is emailing me and asking about different stuff like what's a high, low, medium day of practice for this one player, and all these different things like that. So there's your value kind of on paper and how you can help your colleagues. And then there's the ability to speak that language or bridge that gap. And like, I got so much more buy-in from my fellow strength coach when I was a sports scientist, because he knew that I had coached for 4 summers in the private sector. So he knew that I understood programming. I understood just like weight room talk, and there was things he would run by me that before he knew that I had that experience, he just didn't, right, wrong, or the other, which I'm not blaming him for. But there's just so much that is said to being an expert generalist, being able to wear multiple hats. And because things are more similar than dissimilar, and we're all going for the same goal, like if you can, like, man, I don't even know. I think that's just super valuable. And especially not only for yourself as a professional, but team-wise, like if you have someone that can do, like an A+ athletic trainer versus like a B+ athletic trainer plus a B+ strength coach, then they're only paying one guy. And I'm not saying you should try to be like a B+ person. That might be a bad example, but
Right.
I think that like being within your lane, but there are certain, now athletic training, you need a degree, and you're licensed versus, well, now the CSCS, you need a degree relative to the field, where
Mm-hmm.
before you didn't. But now like the CPSS, Certified Professional Sports Scientist,
Yep.
depending on what level of nutrition, whether it's one or something a little bit more licensed. So you definitely have to stay within your lane, but it's going to help you doing your main job, your main role. And then you're able to kind of fill those gaps, speak that language, wear a few different hats, and provide a lot more value. So I think that's huge, and it's cool that you've been able to see firsthand and how it's improved your main roles, but then also just doing those dual roles yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So next question, and I guess it's good that I kind of flip-flop questions. How does your athletic training influence you as a strength coach, and how does your strength and conditioning influence yourself as an athletic trainer?
I mean, it's really kind of, it's, I don't want to just say it's like it's everything, but it's a huge aspect of it, because again, like being able to be working with a player as he's on the table, and you realize, okay, like, he's tight here. He's, not moving like, well, externally, whatever it might be, just as you're going through like the giant list of player care, working on them, in the back of your head, you're always like, okay, like our next step is going in the weight room. What are exercises that we can do, whether it's activation, mobility, whatever, performance building, to go through that. So, you're going through this whole process. You finally get them in the weight room. When they're in the weight room and they're trying to do these exercises, whatever, and you realize, okay, like they have discrepancies here. They're not quite moving here. They're not pushing off here. Is there, is a big toe issue where they're not like planning and getting like full grip on their feet, like whatever it might be, right? Like then you're reverse thinking, going like, okay, when he's back in the training room, we are now working on this, this, and this, and this, because, you can see the deficits. That's the biggest component that I see, is like, it's just always like connecting dots back and forth and being like, okay, like here I'm seeing this. So in here we can apply that, and there we're applying that. And now we're going to go back to applying this. And, that's really where it comes to like, bridging that gap that's everyone's always talking about. That's where it comes into play.
Connecting the dots and bridging the gap. So imagine if you have your annual strength and conditioning plan, even though plans usually don't make it that long, but imagine if you have a player on the table and it's probably gonna be like a 2-week rehab. Exactly what the volumes, intensities, things like that are going to be in the weight room. Mm-hmm. So instead of kind of just going for a general return to play, like when are you ready, what is going to be required of them, and then now you get the head coach in the convo, and this is where that high performance model comes into play, where the requirements of the weight room, the requirements of the season, the sport practice, what the sport coach is trying to accomplish. And it's instead of just like return to play, it's return to like what the team is doing.
Yep.
And I mean, that sounds a lot simpler when I kind of phrase it like that. It's a lot more complicated than that. But like, where the dots are, or you can just speak that language and figure out what the dots are.
Yep. A perfect example was last summer. We picked up a guy, Caleb Martin from Nevada, and he was, coming in. They were like, all right, he's going to go play in the G League. So he is your assignment. And he came in with, I think, like an MCL sprain or something like that. One of the main benefits of being like that dual certified is that like every single day I did his treatment and I did his rehab and his like strength and conditioning. And it was like, exactly how much to push them every single day, because you literally only work with them. Right. And so like, you get that firsthand. It's not like, when you pass them off to someone else and be like, hey, go work with them. And then they come back and you say, well, how was it? Versus like you're there, you're programming it, you're seeing it. And then, it just kind of makes everything kind of, more circular and, more holistic for that athlete.
Because it is all more similar than dissimilar, not to start repeating myself, but you are all going for the same goal, just within your own lanes. And like, whether you do it yourself or whether you can bust out some like athletic training lingo or whatever it may be, to just like get a better understanding of where they truly are at.
Yep.
And it's how do we keep them on the court and performing at a high level just within our own specific implements. So I think that's super cool that like there's no guesswork. Like it's not, oh, what did he do in AT today? Oh, well, I did it. I was the guy, so I can only imagine just how much the athletes, I'm sure, also appreciated it, that there was no guesswork or communication, or they weren't doubling up on exercises or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I guess kind of question that just came off the top of my head is like, do the players like that? Do they enjoy, keeping those two things separate, kind of having two different personalities and professionals to work with? Or do they like that like one person understands all of it? Consistency. I
think it's a combination. You always, some players obviously like they want to go to the training, or the ones that like almost never get hurt, right? Like they just want to go get a stretch in, some quick activation, and then they want to go in the weight room and go, be with their strength coaches. And, it's just a whole different atmosphere in the weight room versus the training room, right? It really just depends on the player and like what their preference is, at least at this level. Then there's other guys that are like, I want you to, walk me through almost the entire day, because they like that connection, and they, you build these friendships, over time, and it's like, they understand like, what it takes to go from point A to point B with that one person, whatever it might be. So yeah, it's hard to say like, what like each player actually wants, but, kind of loop it all back. Yeah. It's really up to the player and what they prefer at this level. College level, it's like, no, like you're going to the strength coach, then you're coming to the training room or whatever it might be. Here it's very much like, what do you prefer? We try and do like, like our physical therapist, he's absolutely incredible. We'll give him like a couple guys that need like more rehab and correctives and stuff, but he's got an awesome performance background. So he's able to take the guys and go from training room to the weight room and really expand in. The couple guys that work with him will absolutely love it. Versus like some of these other ones are like, all right, let me get a quick stretch and I'm going straight to my strength coach and I'm going to, turn on blast music and we're going to have a blast. So, it's really just up to the player and whatever they want.
Do you have a hard time kind of turning it on and off, like strength coach mode versus quiet, quaint athletic trainer mode?
So not really, but I can say this about myself is I don't like doing rehabs in the training room. I think there's a mental switch with athletes that if they are in the training room, usually they're injured. And that's not always the case. And I would like to do everything in the weight room because it has that mental switch of, hey, I'm here to get bigger, stronger, faster, whatever it might be. So I like to attack it from that angle of like, hey, we're going to go in the weight room, we're going to blast music, and we might do the most simplistic exercise ever. But like, it's just a different mentality, I think, that gets sparked with the players versus it just coming in, laying on the table and waiting. That being said, during the season, on like days where I just have like only treatments, there's no lift, whatever. It's usually always on a Sunday or something like that. I have very calming music playing. Lights are dim, players coming in. It's almost like you create an atmosphere for like, healing kind of thing. That's an approach I take to it. And I think it works. I don't know, but like, just that's kind of the aspect I go with it. It's never hard to kind of go back and forth with it, but in general, like that's where I stand. I'm going like, hey, like, yeah, you might be on the table for like 5 minutes, but come on, let's go in here and like throw some weight around, and you're able to do these exercises. So like, let's go improve.
I think that's huge. Atmosphere, the environment, and just like the headspace, and like just the associations that they do make with, the weight room, the athletic training room, and like those are two, like you do the same exercise on the ground in the athletic training room, you do the same exercise on the ground of the weight room, like you're probably going to get two different outputs. So it's interesting that you've been able to realize that and kind of manipulate those variables, I guess, environment, music, whatever, how you present and speak to kind of get what you want out of the session, and that only comes from having those dual experiences. So I think that that's a super actionable thing, which we'll get to last question, but I think that that's a really cool example, and like just the power of the environment and like what's the headspace and what's the associations that they're going to take away from this interaction. So I thought that was a really cool answer. And we're coming up on the last two. So having experience in multiple fields, and like I said, I love speaking generalities, but as professionals in sports performance, what can we all do better to move this industry forward?
Keep learning. I know that's like the most simplistic thing to say, but like people need to understand that, all right, it doesn't stop after you get your bachelor's. It doesn't stop after you get your master's. Like as soon as you get the ATC credentials, the biggest thing that I learned is as soon as I got my ATC credentials, I didn't know a damn thing. And I've learned more since the day I finished school or finished my undergrad or master's in that time to now than I ever did when I was in school. And simply because it's a different world up here, whatever, and just people do things differently. But like everything that you learn in school is like a base foundation of minimal, and there's maximal stuff out there to learn. It never stops with like I'm an 18 now, I'm good. No, you're not good. Like there's so much more out there that you need to be learning and doing to help these athletes become better. It's just you have to have that love of learning and that that like inner drive. Like for me, like I get my successes out of seeing my players succeed. Well, my players are not going to succeed if I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So having you. It's just you always have to push yourself, and it's just that continual like need to learn and grow and those little things, and like, going from like ATC to CSCS to getting the PN1 or whatever it might be. It's all just like little tiny gaps that you're filling to push the industry forward as a whole. Like that's really what we're doing with that, right? Is the more well-rounded you are, the more you're going to push the industry and push the profession to become like, hey, like we should be held to a higher standard because like we're able to do this, this, and this. So that's the biggest thing I can say. I mean, and at times it absolutely sucks. I'm not gonna lie. I'm going through my doctorate program right now, and it's terrible. It's hard to, like, it's tough to go, do that, work full time. I have a side business going on. It's a lot, but it's 1,000% worth it as soon as you see like players go from A to B. So that's really what it all comes down to.
And with that, if it is a certification specifically, or even if it's just like, I'm going to take, 7 hours a week on this one topic for the next month, or so I guess I want to go back to the certification because that's probably easier to wrap your head around, or just the listener. So similar to like, oh, what if I spend all those hours in the car and all this XYZ, and the CSCS, for example, like it's not the cheapest certification. I've done it myself. And it's not exactly the lightest textbook in the world. But just as likely as, oh, what if I get and I don't use it? Well, that might be not the only reason, but a contributing factor to why you're still in the NBA, is because you just decided, hey, I'm going to go for this. I don't see the direct light at the end of the tunnel, but it could.
Right.
So I think that's huge on just like, this sports performance isn't a time-based field like 9 to 5 clocking. It's a result-based. Especially the more elite you get, college pros, like if you're not helping guys get that 1%, if you're not keeping them on the court, like there's other people that will. So it's how do you get that edge for yourself as a professional? I think if I had to try to rephrase it.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And on top of that, it's like, not to be, I guess like narcissist or anything, but like, when it comes to like competition, everyone else in the sports performance field is your competition. You have to be 1% better than them or more. And like, it's funny. Like I have people that email me that ask to be my intern. They're way more qualified for my job than I am. Like people, they're physical therapists, they're doctors and whatever. I'm just like, why are you emailing me? But yeah, it's just, you got to do you got to learn the stuff and like keep you applicable and, current, and be able to be, you got to be an asset. At the end of the day, you have to be an asset to the players and the organization.
Asset, provide value, and figuring out how you can do that beyond just your one lane, I think is a good way to kind of encapsulate your journey, and not to put you into one sentence, but how can you provide the most value?
Yeah.
So
sure.
Last question. What are 1 to 3 actionable steps the listener can start doing tomorrow to become better?
So, going to take this like a little different route, and there's a recurring theme, but it's something that's helped me throughout my journey 100%. First thing I'm going to say is like, take out a notepad and try and write 10 ideas down. They can be anything, but try and write 10 ideas down that will make you think of ways that you think you can better yourself. And this is just a creativity exercise. It's going to stress, your quote unquote brain muscle, and just make you actually think about, things other than just like, okay, like I'm here, but like, you need to be here when it comes to learning. That's number one. You got to spark that creativity and, stress these different ideas that might come up, because you never know. Like when you write down 10 ideas, first off, it's really hard to write down 10 ideas back to back, like all the way down. Usually people get to like 4 or 5 and you're like, man, I got like brain freeze. But it's just to spark that creativity. You don't know if like one of these days you're going to do it and be like, man, this idea has something to it and it sticks. And then you progress from there. It might change your career path. It might do whatever. I did that. And then all of a sudden it was like, I started my side business from it over quarantine. The second biggest thing, practice mindfulness and self-reflection every day. When you get home from work, think about what you've done, like how it affected the athletes. Was it good? Was it bad? Positive, negative, whatever it might be. But having control over your mental health opens new doors that like would never presented themselves. And I think through mindfulness and uh, mindfulness and just self-reflection is where you get a lot of value out of that. And then the third biggest thing um, is practice gratitude. So that's like the common theme is just like mental health. But we live in like such a really, really negative world. If you wake up and just think about like 2 or 3 things that you're like very grateful for, like health, happy that you're alive, whatever it might be, these things really add up over time to help decrease the amount of negativity. And like I said, like if you don't have a lot of control over, your mental health, these creative ideas never come up, they never spark. And that's really how you get to how I'm going to call it, like a higher level of thinking, right? And that's where you start to think of like, oh, like I can do this, this, and this, and this, whatever it might be, to help all these athletes out or help myself out, change my training, change my diet, my nutrition, how I approach whatever it might be. Those are like the biggest things I can say. That's really where we connect dots with ourselves to become better and help everyone else around us. So yeah, gratitude, mental health, self-reflection, writing down 10, try and write down 10 ideas. I know that was kind of 4, but that's the biggest thing I can say, because that's what like will eventually set you apart from everyone else.
And connecting the dots between those 3 and kind of the whole chat, just to like briefly try to summarize, well, you have to be in the right headspace to make those ideas. And you have to be in the right headspace to believe in yourself, to go act on them. And you have to be in the right headspace to be constructive, have constructive criticism for yourself. You have to be in the right headspace to like look at yourself in the mirror and look at all of these notes of things you could do better from the last week of doing your job. So it definitely all starts with you. But then also all of these things are predicated in action, like putting a pen and paper ideas for yourself, or just like what you believe in as an athletic trainer, a strength coach, as a sports scientist. Like,
absolutely.
I think that I've been trying to do that myself. And it's just like, what do I believe in? It's hard to put the pen and paper, what you believe in, if you had to critique yourself and all of this stuff. So, but the more you can take care of yourself, the better you're going to take care of your athletes. You're a human who happens to be an athletic trainer, just like they're a human that happens to be a pro basketball player.
Yep.
So we are more similar than dissimilar, just our lanes and our implements are different. So if I did those action steps justice, that's my interpretation of it. So is there anything else left to say? Where can listeners get more of you?
So I actually got a new website that just came out yesterday. It's just tlesher.com. And there kind of has like, like everything about me, my new side business where I started a complete weight loss program and, helping people do that. And that'll spark through my doctorate, because my thesis is decreasing systemic inflammation will increase longevity and quality of life. So my sub goal out of everything, like if athletic training stopped today, my goal is to help reverse the obesity trend that is going on in America. So that's like my biggest thing right now, is trying to do my part for that. So yeah, tlesher.com, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure they're Facebook. I think it's just all tlesh15. That's always been my handle for everything. You can find everything on there. I'm continually posting, like new weight loss tip, tricks, hacks, whatever, kettlebells, workouts, all sorts of stuff like that. So that's where everyone can find me. Usually, reach out, shoot me an email, tlesh15@gmail, any of those options. And yeah, I'll get back to people if they have any questions, comments, whatever, and get back to them whenever I can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much for your time, just your openness, pulling the curtain back and sharing your awesome story.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
And